I have two separate accounts to share with you, both from me, in different years, and I believe both were two different creatures entirely. The first one, I've heard from friends that it might be a Bigfoot, but judging by the accounts that I've read and things that I've heard, the description of what I saw doesn't quite add up. Let me go ahead and tell you. Back in 2017, in the summertime, I was down in Central Oregon, closer to Crater Lake, but not too far away from it. It was around dusk, sometime in the later evening. The sun was setting. I can't give you an exact time of day. Traffic seemed to be pretty light this evening, so there wasn't a lot of other cars around. I saw something on the side of the road merge into the traffic lane and turn back the other way, like it stepped out into the road and then realized for whatever reason it wasn't a good idea, and then quickly retreated back into the tree line. On this highway, which forgive me because I can't remember, but I'm sure you could look it up, there is thick patches of forest on both sides that runs for quite a while. In fact, I think it might be a part of a national forest, but again, I can't quite remember. But my headlights illuminated this thing in full, since it was maybe only 100 feet away from me, maybe 50, and as soon as my headlights hit it, it didn't seem to make any hasty attempt to retreat. It kind of stood there like it was taking its time, and then almost as if it decided that it should go back into the woods once it came. Unfortunately, for me, I had to see every detail. It was very ape-like, at least in the body, covered in long, thick, brownish hair. It wasn't black, like what you hear a lot of Bigfoot encounters are. It was a very, very stark brown. Think of like a dark oak tree, or a bark, kind of like that. Very thick, matted hair. The hands resembled that of dark, leathery skin, but I could see that it had all 5 fingers, or 4 fingers and an opposable. I didn't really observe the feet, because they were lower than my field of vision, but I could tell that it easily walked on 2 legs, and was jointed just like a person, bending at the knees. No specific limb or bone looked disproportionate. Some report in Bigfoot encounters that some people say that the arms are long, or maybe the forearms are disproportionately longer than the rest of the body. This didn't seem to be the case. It appeared to be the exact portions and height of an adult male. I would say it was no taller than 6.5 feet, maybe 7 at most, and although it seemed to be lean and built, it wasn't overly built like a Bigfoot would be. You know, overly broad shoulders, no neck, a very cone-shaped head. This didn't have it. It was like a gorilla, but with the body stature of a human. The face, though, is what really confuses me. As my light shone on it, it stood there for a second, and then slowly turned to look at my oncoming vehicle. I didn't have to fully stop, but I did have to slow down. Its eyes were a dull red or black. It didn't illuminate like when a deer jumps out in the road and the eyes light up. It just seemed to not reflect light. It had a very weird, ugly face, kind of like a dog or a coyote, or something with a snout. You know what? Actually, as I type this out, I don't know if you're too young or old for this, but if you've ever heard of the character Alf, A-L-F, if you Google him and look him up, its face kind of reminded me of that. Kind of dog-like, very ugly, but with a snout. Obviously, it didn't look exactly like Alf, but that's the closest I can think of, where it kind of had that snout, dog-like face. It was very weird looking. I didn't see any teeth sticking out, and it never once opened its jaws or mouth, and it remained mono-expressive the entire time, not even moving any muscles in its eyes. Oh, another thing. People report Bigfoot as having a very strong brow ridge. I did not notice any of those things upon glancing at this creature's face, just having large, round, black or dark red eyes. Not blood red, like you'd expect in a horror movie, maybe just a cross between black and a dull red, kind of like what you'd see with an albino animal. After it gazed at my oncoming vehicle for maybe a couple of moments being 1 to 2 seconds, it quickly retreated back into the woods from whence it came. I was pretty shocked to say the least, and I even told some friends of mine. I didn't even care if I would get made fun of, because it was just so bizarre, and I didn't understand what I saw. I had to get answers some way or another. Surprisingly, I did not get made fun of, but when I made the Alf comparison, I kind of got snickers and laughs. I mean, I guess I can't blame them. It does sound pretty silly. But it did not look like Alf. I want to restate that. Alf was kind of a hairy, chubby-looking thing. This thing was very lean. I bet if you took its fur off it, it would have a ripped, lean body like it worked out. And you could just see from its build alone, there was no extra ounce of fat on it. It looked built for speed and strength, like it had lived out there, but was covered in thick, matted fur, kind of like a bear, except just much darker. So, you seem to be the expert on all things monsters and unknown cryptids. So I'm curious, did I see some sort of variant of a Bigfoot or even a Dogman? Or was this a new cryptid or creature altogether, living in the Oregon wilderness? Let me know. Thanks. Alright, so this is my second encounter. This occurred back in January of 2020. I was in eastern Oregon at the time. Broad daylight, by the way. I was traveling on Highway 11, I believe. Somewhere between Walla Walla and Pendleton. I was heading towards Walla Walla. Now, before I step into more detail, the geography of the land is kind of like a desolate farmland. Not really desert-like, but lots of just tall grass. There's a whole lot of nothing out there. If you're curious, you can easily street view Highway 11 on Google Maps and see exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not the best at describing geography, so forgive me. So I'm driving. Again, it's broad daylight. Everything is pretty clear around me. The sun is out, the sky is blue, and everything around me is pretty much just tall grass and the occasional bush here and there. There's not a tree in anywhere of my sighting. There are also plenty of cars on the road, along with semi-trucks and things like that. So I'm sure I was not the only one to have seen what I did. On my side, a little bit off in the field to my right, on my passenger side, movement had caught my eye. After glancing over to see what it was, this strange black being got up from the ground. What appeared to be crouching was now running on all fours, and ran for a short distance. Mind you, this thing was huge, and at this point, completely visible, due to the great lighting conditions, clarity, and other multiple cars around me. There's no reason why nobody else could have seen it. It ran parallel to the road for a very short distance, and dove back down into the tall grass, being fully concealed and no more visibility. Unlike the previous creature that I saw back in the summertime of 2017 down in Central Oregon, this looked nothing alike it. While that thing had longer matted brown hair, this had very short black hair. In fact, it was so black, it was almost undefinable, kind of like a shadow. Like a part of you could tell it was fur, but it was so short that you could just see that it was more just a shape. But it appeared to have small antler-like appendages coming from its head. And its upper body was so overly large, with overly large forearms and upper arms, that it looked extremely disproportionate. It's like if you took the back legs of a bear and took the arms of a man. How crazy that would look. It didn't really make any sense. I didn't get a chance to see the face, more so the backside and the side, and it only ran for maybe 15-20 seconds at most, and kind of had a weird hop to it, if that makes any sense. It wasn't hopping like a rabbit or anything, but as it ran, it kind of had a pep in its step, like it kind of bounced a little bit, almost like it glided, and seemed unnaturally quick. but it was clearly moving each arm and leg as it ran. Why it was concealed in the grass, and how it was able to hide itself, I'm not sure. Considering how black it was, I don't feel like the grass around there is even tall enough to conceal such a large being or animal, whatever it was. And once it dove into the ground, somehow it was fully concealed again, right in a spot where there was no bushes to hide behind, and maybe in grass that was no more than a foot or two in length. So either it dove into a hole in the ground, or somehow touched the ground and vanished. I'm not sure. It was very strange to say the least, and immediately brought my thoughts back to my 2017 sighting, even though I knew right then and there they were two separate things entirely. This thing, I said, was huge, easily larger than the other thing that I saw, which, again, only seemed to be maybe 6 to 7 feet tall at most. I feel, whatever this thing was, had it been standing on two legs, would easily be over 9 or possibly 10 feet tall. It was so large. This is why I was surprised that it was able to be fully concealed by the small amount of grass, as if it just materialized in the ground, popped up, ran parallel with the highway for a short amount of time, and then back into the ground. Who knows, to be honest. I figured that whatever it was, animal, man, beast, or cryptid, would probably want to remain fully concealed and hidden from any sort of view or sight. But like I said, there was a decent amount of traffic around, and I highly doubt I was the only one that saw it, since due to its surroundings, it stuck out like a sore thumb, considering how fast it was moving, the sheer size alone, and how odd it looked, not matching any animal I could ever think. And no, it was clearly not a misidentification of a black bear, a coyote, or any animal that would live out in central eastern Oregon. It didn't match any of those descriptions, and it was far too large. A little bit larger than a cattle, to be exact. So, that's why I'm bringing these accounts to you. I figured you might be smart enough or have the knowledge to truly debunk them like you have with so many other things. And if not, maybe I'll get lucky and you'll read this to your audience and they can help me debunk what it was. I will say this though, I'm pretty sure it was not a Bigfoot. Like the first sighting, it didn't match any descriptions you would ever hear with a Bigfoot, and did not really look like it, either from the side or from behind. And I don't think it was a dogman either. I saw a little bit of the head from the back, and with the strange horn-like appendages, it just didn't make any sense. And no, I was not seeing ears either, and it did not appear to have a dog-like head, just a very strange proportionated body. Maybe it was some kind of new cryptid that I'm unaware exists. Who knows? As long as you can help me find out what it is that I truly saw that day. Thank you so much.